All right, real quick, I want to remind everybody, especially this time of year, did you know at savewithconrad.com you can skip your next 2 house payments? That's right. You'll get a cheaper monthly payment and no payments until next year. How about a little Christmas vacation from house payments? That's right. No payments in November or December at savewithconrad.com.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Well, you know.
That's not a rib. She pooted.
What a rib.
No, there's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared of shit.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
Fuck you, Bruce.
I love you.
Give me double cheeseburger, double cheese, double mayo, double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard. Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm outstanding. Bradshaw 316 says I stole your fucking podcast.
I love that so much. We're having a lot of fun with John. We hope you are too. Hit the subscribe button right now on somethingtowrestle.com. And man, we're going to have a blast talking about the good old days of professional wrestling. It's hard to believe, but way back when, 29 years ago,
Wow.
we had the pretty historic Pillman Austin gun situation. As a reminder, a year earlier, Raw had changed time slots, moving up an hour. And with that time came a major rating stunt. We're talking about Steve Austin having just turned on Brian Pillman on Superstars and re-injuring the ankle. And now we're going to have him invade Brian Pillman's home in Kentucky. So we're going to do a B&E live on Monday Night Raw. And there Pillman is waiting with a gun. And of course, this sparked all kinds of controversy and discussion. A friend of ours often says controversy creates cash. He literally wrote the book about that. But you were a part of the locker room. You'd seen it all in wrestling. Was this your first gun angle in wrestling, John?
This was my first gun angle. I don't think I'd seen one before. I'd heard of one before, but I don't think I'd seen one before. And we were in Kentucky. Wouldn't it be more rare for him not to have a gun in his house?
Man, you got to slow down with all the logic because that's actually pretty logical. Do you remember, were you watching this at the time? Like, I don't remember, but I think that show would have had a lot of taped components to it. Is this something you would have seen in a talent viewing area? Were you watching it at home or people just telling you about it? Do you see it years later? When do you remember actually laying eyes on the footage of this?
I can't remember. This was the time that we were still filming Monday Night Raw every other week. Or we went from ever once a month to like once every 3 weeks or once every other week. And so I remember this was the time we're filming it every other week. And so I would have seen it at home. If I saw it in the talent viewing area. I remember very clearly seeing it, but I don't remember where I saw it. I remember what time I saw it. Whether it was like when they were preempted. We were like off a week or something because we were always we ran competition against ourselves, which I thought was crazy. We'd run a house show sometimes on a Monday night. Against ourselves.
Was that just why do you think that was that just based on routing and economically it made more sense since the trucks are already moving and you could get a good deal on a Monday night from the arenas? Because I'll admit that was always kind of a head scratcher to me. You're asking your most hardcore fans, hey, do you want to sit at home and watch the program or do you want to come out and buy a ticket to see the show? Not the live show, but a different show. You're almost asking your audience to pick a side, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, you've seen that a lot in wrestling over the last, 40, 50 years. And it doesn't make sense to me. I think it was routing is what it was. We'd be on the road, for 10, 12 days at a time sometimes, even in between TV shows. So we'd do a TV, then we'd stay on the road or we'd end up finish on the road at TV. But a lot of times we'd cross over that last week and we'd stay on the road. So we had nowhere to go Monday anyway. So we'd run a show on Monday somewhere. And we'd literally run, not that often, but we'd run competition literally against ourselves. We'd have a show at live event, house show we used to call them, live events they call them now, running at the same time we had a TV show where the same guys are on TV that are at the live event.
So there we go. I just found it. It was actually the matches that were airing that night were filmed in Fort Wayne, Indiana at the War Memorial Coliseum on October 21st, 1996. That taping included an advertised dark match for the show of Shawn Michaels and Vader. That's what was promoted. But we got Flash Funk and Leaf Cassidy. We got Freddie Joe Floyd, who we know as Tracy Smothers, pinning Mike Diamond. We saw The Undertaker, Jesse James, who would later be Road Dogg, and Mark Marrow teaming up against Steve Austin, Mankind, and Goldust. Then we did the in-ring interview with Bret Hart, and this would have actually aired live on television, where Bret Hart announces that he's sticking around. I don't think I knew until just now, as a matter of fact, that the same episode where Bret announces he's staying put, that same series of tapings is when they're doing this shenanigan of Steve Austin and Brian Pillman. Listen, you remember seeing it. What was your reaction? Did you think that was a bridge too far? Were we crossing the line, or is that even possible in pro wrestling, in your opinion?
It's hardly possible. You know, it's not a matter of, I guess there's a matter of good taste that's too far, but it's fiction. You know, to me, it's a work. It's either a work or it didn't. You know, we had attempted homicide many times where you throw a giant off a building. You had guys try to kill each other with literally try to kill each other with cars. I set Cena up one time in a car and drove another car into him, and they filmed it as if you didn't know for sure if I literally had killed him or not. So we had all kinds of stuff like this. I think it's either a work or it isn't. Now, I understand you don't want to do certain things because kids can imitate that. I understand there's a line there, and I do agree with that. But to me, it's either a work or it isn't. So if you got a gun out there, this no different than your TV crime dramas or anything else, in my opinion.
This angle, it certainly feels like firmly placed handguns into the too real for wrestling list. And I don't think we've seen any gun angles since then. None certainly high profile. But it's interesting to think, hey, what if this wouldn't have been so poorly received and so controversial and people really dug it? Is there an alternative timeline where this is embraced and guns can be a part of storytelling in wrestling moving forward? And I know there's a whole lot of people who are going to be critical of me even suggesting that, but to your point, hey, it's primetime television programming. Like, look at all the CSI and SCU. I mean, there's all this crazy stuff out there that airs on TV that has crime drama and there's violence and there's death and there's certainly adult themes. And we're certainly figuring out where the line is. I mean, a few years after this, we're going to start teasing that we're going to sacrifice somebody and we're going to crucify. I'm sorry. We're going to attach them to a symbol, but we're going to do lots of other silly stuff, John. Is there a way you think if this would have went well, guns could have been embraced in pro wrestling?
We even had a deliverance scene with me and Ron and Howard Finkel.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, we've done a lot worse shit than this. Like I'm hooked on. I've been doing cardio and I get bored doing cardio, so I watch something. And I've been watching The Blacklist with James Spader, which is just freaking awesome. They have guys regularly and girls getting tortured on their shows all the time to get them information. And it's part of the good guy torturing the person. People get killed, in a massive amount of people get killed every single episode. And this is on, whatever your regular streaming platforms are. They get killed regularly. I don't see a big difference. I understand, you can't use you're not going to bring a gun into a loaded arena. So you can't use a gun as part of something, in a loaded arena because, my God, man, that'd cause a riot if, somebody would have believed that it's a real gun. Hopefully it certainly wouldn't be. But I don't think, I don't know if it's a bridge too far or not. In my opinion, it's either a work or it isn't. And it's a matter of, are you endangering kids' lives by giving them something they can do? I don't see any difference between this and The Blacklist as far as when you're doing it offset, as in not in the arena in front of a bunch of people.
We know a few years after this, James Storm would appear in TNA, and the early version of James Storm, like the one in Huntsville, the very first TNA show, he's going to come to the arena or come down to the ring with holsters, and he's going to pull pistols and shoot them in the air ringside. And of course he's shooting blanks and it's just props and it's for effect, but it really added to the presentation. And we know during the Attitude Era, I guess a year later, we're going to tease Steve Austin hijacking Vince McMahon. Maybe it's 2 years later. And he's going to put the gun to his head and pull the trigger, and it says bang 316. But you really have to look. I mean, it's kind of few and far between with guns. Did you ever think that a gun would have fit with the JBL character? I mean, when he's doing all the stuff at the border, him firing a shotgun in the air or whatever, it would have really fit the character, wouldn't it?
100%. An arrogant bastard like JBL would have carried a gun, thinking he was a tough guy, thinking he's John Wayne or something. Yeah, it would have fit JBL perfectly. Certainly would have fit at the border. You would have a shotgun with you and act like you're going to defend the border or something. And I guess they learned their lesson from the fallout from this is the reason they didn't. By the way, Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch got kicked out of the AWA territory by shooting a gun on an Appaloosa donkey in a bar in the ceiling.
Wait a minute. What now? Can you tell us that story?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Dusty and Dick for somehow got an Appaloosa donkey, and they were keeping it in their hotel room. And it was like shitting everywhere, as donkeys would do. I don't know a lot about donkeys. Bruce likes donkeys. He likes all kinds of donkeys. He likes tall donkeys and short donkeys and fat donkeys and skinny donkeys. He likes all kinds of donkeys, but that's his prerogative. I don't know if he got that from Dusty and Dick. They had a donkey, an Appaloosa donkey, in their freaking hotel room that was shitting everywhere. And they said, you got to get the damn thing out of here. So they called Vern. Vern says, you got to get that donkey out of here. So Dusty rode it into the local bar and was shooting pistols up into the ceiling. And that's when the police went to Vern and said, you got to do something about these guys. And so he sent them to Eddie Graham.
Okay, I got a lot of questions here. I was always under the impression that this donkey was in their apartment. The idea that
it could have been their apartment. Could have been their apartment, not the hotel. It could have been their apartment, not the hotel. It's where they were staying. So I stand corrected.
Because if it was in a hotel, I have to
correct. I stand corrected. It was apartments.
The visual, let's just go with your original thought for a minute. The visual of them trying to sneak a donkey past the front desk to get to their room. And then I was like, wait, it has to be a motel where you can just exit right to the parking lot. How else would you just parade a donkey through the lobby and nobody says anything?
Agree. It's so much easier in an apartment. It happens all the time. But I got a lot of questions too, Conrad. Where the fuck do you get a donkey? Where do you get a donkey in the middle of Minnesota and get it into your apartment? That makes no sense to me.
More importantly,
you don't.
How did it get there? Was it in the back of a truck bed? Were one of them driving a truck and they just threw it in the bed and tied it down or something? I mean,
that I don't know.
Horse trailers.
The two people that might know that are kind of half alive are Greg Gagne and Gerald Briscoe. So Greg knows all about the story because he remembers it from his dad. And Jerry knows all about the story because he remembers it from Dusty. And he received Dusty down the territory. And that's when they went through the toll booths and they had all the midgets with them and all. And it was like a disaster. And they're like, what are we going to do with these guys? Then Dusty becomes this massive freaking draw. They're going, don't care what we do with him. He can do whatever the hell he wants. He can put midgets in his car or donkeys in his apartment. We don't care.
Hey, so chat me up. What do you remember about guns and wrestling? Like, I've heard The Undertaker years ago on a podcast say that a lot of old timers used to carry a gun in their bag. When you were first breaking in and you were traveling, did you feel like you needed to travel with a gun?
I never had a gun. I never wanted to have to use it. I never wanted to have to pull it and use it. I thought, good grief, I drink too much. I'm not gonna have it. I'd be shooting the damn thing. These guys are shooting them, bad about shooting them at road signs and all that stuff. I knew better than to have a gun with me because the temptation is too much, not to shoot somebody, but to shoot something stupid, like go down the road and be shooting signs. That's what guys used to do all the time. That's how Barry Windham got shot. I told you about Steve Kern. They were shooting a sign, and the thing came back off the sign, and a 9mm slug went in Barry Windham's leg, and it rolled all the way down the hill. And Kern told him to quit selling and come on where they had to go. So yeah, I just saw that clip, by the way, of Taker talking about those guns. What was the fallout on that? Did people say anything about that? I remember a little bit of fallout on that when Taker said that.
Well, yeah, I think when Taker was saying it, it was, hey, guys used to carry guns, now they carry PlayStations. It is what it is. But
yeah, but the Conrad, that was true. Guys, the guys always had guns. Now I'm not saying everybody, down south, my God, man, we had to travel all the time. We stayed in really bad hotels. We stayed in some unsafe places sometimes. And guys always had guns. I saw guys with some switchblades and stuff, but I mean, if you're going to carry a weapon, I mean, they're both felonies. You're not going to carry a knife. You're going to carry a gun. And a lot of guys did carry guns. So, I never did because I never wanted the temptation of, shooting a road sign or shooting out windows or shooting a TV or something. I knew me when I'm, too much to drink. I don't have a lot of sense. And so I didn't need to have a gun with me.
When we're talking about guns, at least in front of the camera, as far as the story goes, the USA Network, under different ownership and management from its current incarnation, to be clear, gave the green light for the whole angle here with Brian Pillman and Steve Austin, only to scapegoat the company when they got too many complaints the very next day. With the benefit of hindsight, I bet Vince doesn't forget something like that, where he makes a deal with you and you guys agree, and then when there's a little bit of heat on it, you go, not it. That feels like something Vince would have taken personally and not forgotten.
Yep, 100%. Vince is a very vengeful guy, and he gets revenge at his time, not yours. That's something that he would say a lot, and he would tell me that as a teaching moment. You get revenge at your time, not theirs. And when you talk about firing people, he'd say, "I'll fire people when it's convenient for me, not for them." Vince was very big on that, but Vince was also mercenary as far as the TV show. You look at how many different TV products we were on. Now we had, USA damn near forever, but we went Spike TV. We went all kinds of different. Look at all the different platforms. Vince was a true mercenary, but I do believe that he would not forget that. Now, by the way, Conrad, during that time, they had a very circular blame route that they would go. It was very simple. So USA would agree to stuff, or at least say it's okay, or somebody would bitch at USA. They would say, well, that was Vince. They'd call Vince. Vince say, oh, I'm sorry. That's our talent. That's Stone Cold. That's The Rock. That's the APA. That's DX. They just did it on their own. It's live TV. What are we going to do? Ratings are terrific. I'll talk to the talent. Now, Vince knew it was going to happen. Vince may have even written it. The talent knew that the USA knew it was going to happen. They may have even approved it. But there's always this circular argument where it always got blame from here, blame from here, blame from here, and blame from here. And then everybody goes, okay, that was dealt with. Thank you. Ratings were so good back then, nobody was going to do much.
Controversy aside, what did you think of this as an angle? Austin doing a breaking and entering on Pillman's home and Pillman trying to defend it with a gun, and then they lose the signal. From an artistic perspective, if you're just looking at it on the surface, not thinking about the controversy, do you like it? Could it have worked?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the two talents that are there. I mean, Pillman was fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Brian Pillman. And that character, that loose cannon character, that was Brian. I mean, he was really good at that. And Stone Cold is, I think, one of the greatest. He's one of the greatest draws of all time, not the greatest. I thought his acting movie that he did when he was on the island and that I thought Steve was going to be the next big star in Hollywood. I think that much of Steve. I think Steve's fantastic. Anything Steve does is money. And so, yes, I thought the thing worked. I thought you could have gone a lot of ways with it. I don't know, got called off for whatever reason because USA Network apparently didn't like the gun, or the right people bitched at the right people, whatever happened. It was kind of like the Vince getting blown up by the car. In the car, the next week, unfortunately, the Benoit stuff happened. And the whole, I'd like to have seen that played out. I mean, there was a couple things here that could have been really interesting if they'd have been allowed to play out.
Is there anything you think they could have done differently to sort of mitigate the controversy, short of removing the gun aspect entirely? Like, is there a way to make the gun work?
No.
Keep it in?
No, absolutely not. No, I don't think so. Do you? I don't think there is. If you got a gun, you got a gun. And if you got a gun, who cares if you shoot it? I mean, if you got a gun, it's bad enough anyway. You might as well shoot the damn thing, and you might as well let the TV go out like somebody just got blown up or killed. I mean, you can't really be half pregnant with this thing. You pull a gun and you're there, buddy. And again, I don't have a problem with it. It was off campus. It was in a controlled environment, and I don't see it as different as any other TV show. Obviously, they did.
I think the movie you were referencing that you liked with Steve Austin wasn't The Longest Yard. It was The Condemned.
The Condemned. Great movie. Steve did a hell of a job in that movie.
Yeah.
My wife was in Europe, and her and Steve are friends. She flew back from Europe just for the premiere, and we went straight to it. And it was awesome. I remember seeing it. I thought, man, this guy's the next big star in freaking Hollywood. And for some reason, it never happened. I don't know why. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he wanted to just drive his 4-wheeler up in Tahoe or Reno or wherever he is up in Nevada. But I thought he did a great job. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. Do you know the character he played? What their name was?
No.
Jack Conrad.
Really?
Isn't that wild?
Tremendous.
You almost never hear Conrad. I think the reason it didn't hit is because it only did like $7 million domestically at the box office. So it just didn't do strong at the box office. But I think everybody who watched it critically thought, hey, Austin did pretty well.
He was great. You know, the name they've never used in a movie is Dave Silva.
You know, there's probably a reason for that.
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
Let me say this, though. I don't doubt that if you have a handgun at home, you need stop box. I mean, let's be real. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe, but it's out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured. That means you're leaving it vulnerable to anyone. Well, Stopbox USA saw this problem and designed a groundbreaking solution. We're talking about the Stopbox Pro. With the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters, without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, no power needed. And with the Stopbox USA, you finally have both security and readiness. The Stopbox Pro's mechanical keyless system allows for fast, secure access without the risk of fumbling for keys when every second counts. It's also battery free, so you never have to worry about your lock not working. And you never have to worry about tariffs because everything is sourced right here in the USA. All of the Stopbox products are proudly made in the USA in their own facility. Not only does this ensure the highest quality craftsmanship of every product sent out, it also creates meaningful opportunities for American workers. Traveling with peace of mind is easy too with the Stopbox Pro because it's TSA compliant. And right now, for a limited time, our listeners can get 15% off at Stopbox when you use the promo code STW at checkout. What you want to do is just head on over to stopboxusa.com, use our code STW. They're going to get you 15% off your entire order. After you purchase, they're going to ask you how you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. That's stopboxusa.com, and the promo code is STW. So listen, man, it's hard to imagine, but nearly 30 years ago this week is maybe one of the most controversial and, I don't know, talked about, debated, digested, discussed moments in wrestling history. Of course, I'm talking about the Montreal Screwjob. At least as of that night in Montreal, what did the locker room know about the twists and turn of what had been happening leading up to the match? Like when Brett went to Sean to tell him not to worry about his safety in the ring, that he was happy to do the honors. And then Sean allegedly said something like, thanks, but I wouldn't do the same for you. Is that something that makes its way around the locker room? Like, did people know that these details were happening behind the scenes, or was everyone totally caught off guard?
No, not caught off guard. I don't know how much we knew. I don't remember hearing that at the time. At least I don't remember. I could have, I heard it shortly thereafter. I don't know if Sean ever confirmed that was true or not. I don't, they said a lot of things to each other that, when you don't like a person and you're trying to be hurtful, you say hurtful things. So it's not like, oh man, he said something that was mean. They're trying to say mean stuff to each other. They don't like each other. They got into a fight in the bathroom. It's not, we know these guys don't like each other. So if he said something that was mean and sarcastic and biting, that's what you do when you're trying to either pick a fight or you don't like somebody. And I don't think that's, people are like blown that thing out of proportion. Who cares? They didn't like each other. They want to do business with each other. And then all of a sudden this thing comes up, and this was a total, black swan that came out of the blue as far as what ended up happening.
Were the boys aware, do you think, that Brett was actually under contract for another month past Survivor Series? I know allegedly there's some sort of talent meeting that happens the day after the Montreal Screwjob, and then we're talking about Monday Night Raw, and allegedly that's where Vince would lay out, I couldn't have our champion show up with the title on Nitro and throw it in the trash like Medusa did, that sort of thing.
That's not alleged.
Okay, so tell me about that meeting, best you recall.
Yeah, Vince just laid the whole thing out for the guys. It wasn't the guys already knew all this. I mean, and it wasn't, Vince laid the whole thing out. That was the day when, I guess Foley was talked off the ledge. He was wanting to, organize a union or whatever it was. And, guys were debating what to do or what not to do. Conrad, it wasn't that big a deal with the boys. I'm telling you, it was, what are you going to do? I've got the job of my life. Take me, for example. I've got the job of my lifetime. Now I'm about to go to Japan in a day. I'm literally going over there with Barry Windham and hoping to get a job over there because I don't think my contract's going to be renewed. But you take me, for example. I got the job of my lifetime. And you've got a personal conflict between two huge stars, two great stars who are making a ton of money, and justifiably so. That doesn't involve me whatsoever. And I really don't care what happened. I just want a job. I got bills to pay back in Texas. And no matter what happens between Sean and Brett, I'm thinking like most of the guys in the locker room, it doesn't affect me.
Wow. I love to hear that. That's interesting perspective. I mean, tell me what you remember about going to work the day after the Montreal Screwjob. Like when you show up there, did you expect that Brett would be there? I can't imagine that you were there through the end of the night at the Survivor Series, or were you?
Oh, God almighty. One of the biggest regrets of my life, Conrad. Me and Barry had got the deal to go to Japan. I've told you this many, many times. WCW had a deal with New Japan, with Inoki's group. Vince wanted a deal with Baba's group, to kind of tit for tat. So me and Wyndham were kind of going over there as an olive branch. And Barry, per JR, was going to be the liaison between the two, between Baba's group and Vince and WWE. We didn't realize that Laurinaitis had already filled that role. And we didn't know the dynamic of the office in Japan. And so, just a, I guess, mistaken research that didn't go on very well. So that part didn't work out. Then when the Montreal Screwjob happened, they offered me a contract, which I didn't expect. So all of that changed. So Barry and I have got to go to Japan in a day. So back then, you didn't stay for a lot of the matches. This is one of the biggest regrets of my life. I left when the match started because we had to drive either to Ottawa or somewhere else, about a 4 or 5 hour. I can't remember what it was. We had to drive somewhere. I think it was Ottawa. And we had to drive somewhere to get there for the next day. So believe me, I checked because we wondered if something was going to happen. Taker was there, but Taker was there a lot, in case somebody got hurt or something happened. I think he was there, though, in case, Brett or Sean, something blew up, which certainly could have happened. Either Brett walks out or Sean walks out or they get in a fight and somebody gets a hand broke or something and can't compete, which could have happened. So I'm sitting there earlier in the day and I asked Tim White, I said, hey, Tim, anything going to happen? Because me and Barry were getting ready to leave and drive to the next town because we had that long flight to Japan. And that was a big deal for me because I wanted to get the job for Baba. And so Tim White says, no, I don't think so, kid. I said, nothing's going to happen. He said, no, don't think so. Hadn't heard a word. I said, okay. Tim's a pretty honest guy. And I think he would have told me if he knew. And in hindsight, he didn't know. But I'm saying that, I trusted him to tell me because he knew that I wouldn't tell anybody. And so then right before we left, the match had just started. We waited for the match to get in the ring because that's when you take off and go because that's when the parking lot is clear. Everybody's in the ring, waiting to see the main event. And right before it happened, Dave Hebner comes back and gets the bags out of the dressing room. And I said, what's up, Dave? Something going on? And he said, no, just getting our bags to the car. I didn't realize at the exact same time frame by talking to Gerald Briscoe that Briscoe had just told Earl that this was going to happen. This was what he needed to do. Earl told, because he wanted them to get out of the arena for safety. So Earl had told Dave, because Gerald told Earl, tell Dave, get stuff put in your car. Earl didn't smarten up Dave, but he did tell him, get our stuff and get it in the car. We're going to have to go right after the last match. And so Dave comes in. I don't realize this at the time. I literally ask him, what's the matter, Dave? You doing something? And he goes, no, just getting our stuff and putting it in the car. I didn't think anything of it. And from what I remember, no one in the dressing room thought anything. There was nobody in that dressing room that thought, there was no talk of a screw job. There was no talk of something crazy happening. There was no talk of nothing. The only thing I saw or heard was when I asked Tim White, anything going to happen tonight? Any reason to stay around? He said, no, kid, I don't think so. And then when Dave came in and got his bag, I said, "What are you doing, Dave? Doing something?" And he said, "No, just getting our bag." I realized later that's when Earl had just been told, because Earl had not been told until literally right before the match started. Gerald had waited and waited and waited, was trying to figure out the right time to tell Earl, and he wasn't sure when to do it. He had a backup with Tim White, but I think they knew that Tim was more a WWE guy and could have pulled it. I think Brett was more leery of Tim. They had a backup with Tim, but Earl was the guy, and they waited to tell him until right before the match, and which was kind of a risk, but Gerald was spot on with it. That's why Vince trusted him so much. The guy who knows the most about the Montreal Screwjob is Gerald Briscoe. Maybe I don't know about more than Vince. Vince obviously orchestrated it. Kevin Dunn, he's obviously in the truck, but Gerald was the one that was the nuts and bolts guy who put it all together.
JCW Lunacy. New episodes every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. For over 25 years, JCW has delivered the very best in pro wrestling entertainment, bringing fans deep storytelling drama, gut-busting comedy, and unbelievable in-ring action. From wild characters to unforgettable rivalries, don't miss a single moment. Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube. JCW Lunacy.
You mentioned Vince. Do you think we'll ever hear from Vince about, the history of WWE and these nostalgia subjects and things like that? Like, I know that he's by some folks perceived to be a controversial figure right now. And I get that with the allegations and things from recent years, but I don't think he'll ever write a book. Do you think, and if he's not quote unquote in power with WWE, I don't know that he can necessarily license footage to really tell the story. Do you think there's a chance that we would ever hear Vince's side of things like this sort of unvarnished in the future, or is he just a windshield guy and never looking in the rearview mirror?
I'll give you the over-under on the book in 2 years.
What does that mean?
Maybe one. Probably not one. I don't think you can write it that quick.
But you think there's a chance that 2 years from now we've got a book?
I think there's probably a 99 to 100% chance.
Okay. Well, all right. Didn't expect to hear that.
Yeah. I think there's unless something happens, I think there's nothing's 100%. As close to 100% as you can get in the next, I would say 1 to 2 years, you're going to get a book. And I have a feeling it's going to be beyond belief. I have a feeling it will be raw, and it will be completely no freaking hiding and nothing. I think Vince is going to let everything out. And I think it's going to be one of the best books ever written. I can't wait to read it.
I don't even know what to say right now. Listen, we've heard through the rumor and innuendo, you know how that stuff goes, that there is a production house, that perhaps he has an office for his new production company in Connecticut, and perhaps he secured studio space in Santa Monica, California. Do you think this might actually be like a series that we could watch on TV one day?
Or do you think I hope so.
Because I can't wait for that. If that's right.
I don't want to, talk about, the people that have passed away, especially people that were very nice to me. But Vince was very upset about a person that wrote a book, and he wrote kind of the home version, as you understand what I'm talking about. He didn't write, and for very good reasons. He didn't want to write about, any type of, maybe drug abuse or affairs or anything like that. So, and Vince, I remember, was very, very unhappy about that. He wanted the truth to be told. He thought it was fine. He put it out in a book. Jesse Ventura did that. Put it out all out in a book, and when he's running for governor, and it worked. I have a feeling Vince is going to put every single detail in there, embarrassing or not. And I have a feeling it's going to be one of the craziest things. I've told people for so long, if people knew the real Vince, they would not believe it. They would think it's fiction. The way he worked, the way he would drink till 2 or 3 in the morning, then go to the gym and then go come in for a little nap and get up and do cardio the next morning and do that 7 days a week. People are going to find it hard to believe, but I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. And I think, for what I understand, I'm not saying what I understand. I don't want to say anything I shouldn't. I have a feeling it's going to be out within a year or two.
Listen, I appreciate what you said, and you're not trying to speak ill of the dead and all that. But if I'm having trouble following, I'm sure some of our other listeners are.
What do I need to clarify?
Am I fair to guess that the person you're talking about who wrote a book that maybe Vince was disappointed in was the farcical Hulk Hogan book from 20 years ago?
Yeah, yeah, that was it. Vince wanted him to write a book that was about Hogan. Hogan led a great life. Hogan. You know, I understand all of the racist allegations and the stuff that he said, which is inexcusable, by the way. But Hogan had a wild, crazy life. I mean, he lived like a freaking rock star. I'm telling you, Mick Jagger would be jealous of the way Hogan lived. And Vince wanted that put in the book. Instead, it was almost just half written in character, you know, just kind of written the home version. And Vince was, I remember I was on a plane with him. He was very disappointed.
Well, let's talk about, by the way, you just lit the internet on fire with the idea that there's going to be a Vince McMahon book. So it will be the #1 headline for everything that people talk about in the coming days. Do you think it will change people's perception about Vince McMahon when they read the book? Because there's a lot of people listening to this who've never met Vince McMahon and have never had a conversation with him, but based on what they've read or what they've heard, they've decided, I hate him. He's a bad guy. I don't like him, blah, blah, blah. And they've made that decision without knowing his side of the story, without ever hearing from him.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm curious, do you think when people hear Vince's version of the truth, whatever that may be, however you feel about that, will people feel differently about Vince McMahon on the other side of that?
I'm kind of surprised that this is news that Vince could have a book out. Is that news?
Major news. It's the #1 headline. The minute we post and publish this, it'll be the #1 headline on every wrestling site in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising. I just assumed anyway.
There's a lot of people who don't know Vince McMahon, myself included. I don't really know Vince. I mean, we've had 4 conversations maybe ever.
Yeah, and I don't want to give away in his personal business, and I don't think that the speculation that there's going to be a book out within 2 years is necessarily giving away his personal business. I would not give away any of his personal business. You know, I wouldn't mention even if there was a 80th birthday party, much less tell anybody details of it. So I don't want to give anything away to a guy who's been such a wonderful benefactor to me. But Vince has never told his side of the story. And when you don't tell your side of the story, you get blasted. I mean, it's just everything's against you. You know, it's almost like so. Look at two great baseball players. Look at Roger Clemens, a great fireballer from God bless Texas, great pitcher. Andy Pettitte, another great pitcher. Both played for the Yankees. Both got busted. You know, whatever it was. I don't know if it was allegedly or not. Whatever it was, PEDs. Clemens was at the end of his career, never made a comeback. Pettitte comes back and has a great year with the Yankees. He's forgiven. He's going to probably go in the Hall of Fame if he hadn't already. I don't know if he has or not. Clemens remains blackballed because there was never a second act. Jason Giambi comes out, gets busted for PEDs or whatever it was. New York's calling about what a bum he was. I remember the front page of the New York Post was something like bum or cheat or something like that. And I remember why I said, man, they really hate him. I said, no, he's batting 200 right now. Wait till he bats 300. Sure enough, he goes on a run. They have mustache night because of Jason Giambi. He becomes the fan favorite again. When you can have a second act, you get over all of this stuff. You have a chance to. You don't always do it, but you have a chance to. But you got to have that second act. Vince hasn't had that. Vince has allowed all of this against him, and I've seen him deal with a lot of crisis. Once Vince comes out and starts telling his side of the story, I think it will change things. And especially if there's more to it than just a book, which it sounds like there is. I don't have any inside knowledge for this with the production facility he has and all that. If he has a second act, yes, I think there will be some people who will hate him forever. And some people will look at it and think I was wrong when I thought about him.
There's a lot of people who feel like, hey, Vince should just go quietly into the night and just disappear forever and get on that yacht and enjoy all that money. And
let me tell you a little story. So right before, I didn't realize that the TKO had just agreed to the deal, $9.3 billion or what it was. By the way, this is some Game of Thrones stuff, by the way. You buy a company from your father. It actually wasn't quite $1 million. That was what it said. You know, the thing is a little more than that, but $1 million in 81, you sell it for $9.3 billion a few decades later and retain control. That's Game of Thrones stuff. So it was at WrestleMania, and I knew Vince was in the building. So I figured out where he was. He had a room downstairs. I can't remember what building. I think we're in California. I can't remember where we were. Anyway, I find where he is and knock on the door and go in. And there's Brad and say hi to Brad. And Vince comes out in just a second. And I hadn't seen him in forever since he got ousted from the company. And he's just making this deal with TKO. And I said, I am so happy you did not go quietly into the night. And that man looked at me, and his eyes, it's like they lit on fire, Conrad. I mean, it's hard to explain. He goes, "You fucking knew I wouldn't do that." And the way he said it, I'm like, "Oh my God, wow, that is some powerful shit." I said, "That's why I love you, boss." He ain't going quietly in the night. I can tell you that. I don't know what's going to happen. I have no inside information whatsoever. And but I can tell you, I don't think he's going quietly into the night.
Well, listen, man, you never know what to expect here on Something to Wrestle. That's why I love doing this show with you. I wanted to talk about the screw job, but what we just got was way more interesting. And that's what you can expect from Raycon. This message is sponsored by Raycon. It's Raycon's anniversary. And what better way to celebrate than with a deal on the Everyday Classics? We're talking Everyday Earbud Classic. Now they're 20% off. It's the perfect time to get your hands on these. They're reliable. They're super comfy, and you can take them anywhere. It's easy. It's easy to see why they've been a fan favorite since day one. I got to tell you, my wife and I have been rocking these for a while. She uses hers at the gym. She prefers it to those other ones. You know which ones we're talking about. They were never comfortable for her. She could never get them to stay put. That's never been a problem with Raycon. When we got a set of these at the house, man, she was jumping for joy. The Everyday Earbuds Classics are loaded with all the classic upgrades you would hope for. How about active noise cancellation? What about multi-point connectivity so you can pair with two devices at once? They've even got an ergonomic fit that actually stays put no matter what you're doing. My wife really likes the blush violet. I think the cool mint's kind of cool. They've got a lot of new colors that are a vibe, man. They feel less like just earbuds and more like an accessory that really matches you and your personality. I really like the way they have these everyday features too. They really live up to the name. When they say quick charge, they mean it. You can get 90 minutes of playtime on just a 10-minute charge. In fact, when you use the battery case, or the actual holding case, you get 32 hours of battery life in this. That's like more than you could ever need. And the awareness mode is really awesome. If you're going to be running errands or maybe you're walking your dog, you can stay tuned into what's happening around you, but not miss a beat of what you're listening to either. Here's the deal. Over 3 million customers already love their Raycons, and you will too. They want to make sure of that. That's why they offer you the 30-day happiness guarantee. You see, if you don't love your Raycons, returns are easy, so you got nothing to lose. I love mine. My wife loves hers, and you're going to love yours. Go right now to buyraycon.com/wrestle and get 20% off the Everyday Earbuds Classic. That's buyraycon.com/wrestle to get 20% off the Everyday Earbuds Classic.
I've got my Raycon. I got them right here.
There you go.
I'm all set. And so I suggest everybody get them out there because what you can do, you can listen to this podcast because Bradshaw 316 says, I just stole your fucking podcast.
Yeah, you need to hear that in live and living color. Hey, I do want to ask you a little bit more about the screw job. You know, Dave Meltzer has talked about the wrestlers that night and how some of them started calling him from the hotel. Some of them were angry about the screw job being done. Some of them were upset that it happened with Brett's son Blade being there. He actually carried the Canadian flag to the ring that day. And you know, some people saw this as like wrestling politics. I mean, we just talked to Jeff Jarrett earlier in the week, and he felt like, you know, at the time it didn't feel like that big of a deal to him, but he's the son of a promoter's kid. When you show up to work the next day, because you acknowledge that you left early. So when you show up to Monday Night Raw the next
and by the way, almost everybody did. That's why there wasn't a lot of people there at the end. Everybody left early back in the day because we were on the road so long, you know, guys would leave early. And so it wasn't that uncommon of guys left. That's why there wasn't a ton of people in the building that night, which is probably good because don't tell what would have happened if you'd had, you know, 40 guys there, 40 of the boys there, you know, pretty high octane guys.
As a reminder, the Survivor Series is called the Montreal Screwjob because it's in Montreal. Raw the next night is 2.5 hours later, or 2.5 hours away in Ottawa. So you've got a little bit of a drive ahead of you. And that night, you wind up wrestling on that Monday Night Raw. It's going to be Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. This is before they're officially the New Age Outlaws. And they're going to beat you in a handicap match back when you're Blackjack Bradshaw. And then you immediately get on a plane and go to Japan. We'll talk about that in a minute. But when you show up to TV that day, do you know that a screw job happened? Do you think it was a work? Like, did you half-assed expect Brett to be at TV that day? And did you know there was a fight between Vince and Brett the night before? But did you know that when you come into the building?
Yes, yeah, I knew all of it. And I don't know how I got word of it. We found out that night. And we were like, God, we left. We missed the whole thing. I'm telling you, I'm so pissed off about the fact that we left. I was there and left right when the match started. But yeah, I knew all about it. Somehow I found out about that night. We didn't have, I don't know if we had an internet, already then or not, but certainly I wouldn't have checked it probably in Canada because I didn't have the, a data plan. But we heard about it that night. Everything like that, everything that you talked about. Did I think it was a work? No, no. I was convinced that it wasn't then. And I'm I can say nothing's 100%. I'm as 100% as you can get convinced that it wasn't a work. Gerald Briscoe's a good friend of mine. He's lined out the whole thing for me. We had Earl Hebner on our show, Stories of Briscoe and Bradshaw. And for the first time since the Montreal Screwjob, they talked to each other about the Montreal Screwjob. And Gerald told Earl, he goes, I'm sorry that I put you in that position. And it was kind of cool. Earl, it was a real heartwarming moment between the two that, Gerald said, hey, Earl, we're friends. And I felt bad that I had to put you in that position. And he said, I've always wanted to apologize to you because you bore the brunt of a lot of what was not your decision, was our decision that we handed down to you. And then, obviously Earl did agree to it, but there wasn't much choice there. And so it was pretty cool to hear those two guys talk to each other, but I never thought it was a work. And I certainly don't today.
Well, you weren't getting all the inside scoop from Briscoe back then, were you? I know you are now, but I'm saying in 1997, when you show up to the building, it's not like you said, all right, Mr. Briscoe, give it to me. What's going on? You weren't doing that back then.
Oh, no. I've got it now, but I did. Well, I did hear it from Jerry because I asked him about it. I asked him about it the next day a little, somewhat, but Conrad, it wasn't that major of a deal. And, not for us. Now, if I had been Brett, if I had been Sean, if I had been Bruce or Jerry or Vince, yeah, it's a major fucking deal. But for us, it's not that. It did not involve us. This involved a title. This involved a guy leaving. This has got two incredible stars, as I said, making a ton of money, justifiably so, over like crazy. I want a job. I want to be involved and be good enough to be involved in a screw job. I wasn't. And so I'm like most of the guys. The guys were not upset about this. Foley was, and a few others maybe were. But
Rude left, yeah.
Yeah, he was involved too. He was in the match, and nobody told him. Rude was in the angle, and nobody told him. There's a reason.
Here's the thing too, just to throw this out there. Rude was also in a nightly deal. So we can say that Rude was upset, and we'll go with that because that's the wrestling lore. But I've always thought to myself, if I'm getting paid a per appearance deal here from the WWF, and I've been on their TV, I've been on their pay-per-view for months, and they've not firmed me up with a real guaranteed contract, I can leverage this opportunity to go get guaranteed money in WCW. It's a no-brainer for me.
Which is exactly what Rude did.
Yes.
It's exactly what Rude did. Rude was a very smart guy.
Yes.
And he was a very savvy guy, which sometimes, guy could be that, that typical book smart, not be savvy. Rick was a very savvy guy. He was a very knowledgeable guy. And he levered that, and he's also, he's got to be thinking of himself. I don't know how mad he was about this, but he certainly levered it and went down to WCW, which he should have done.
John, I feel like we've probably cussed and discussed the Montreal Screwjob angle from every possible direction. But I do want to ask, in the moment, was there any heat on Sean from a locker room perspective for being someone who was a part of this? Like, I don't know, I wasn't there, but the narrative that's out there for a lot of wrestling fans is it's the boys versus the office. So if you've got a guy who seemingly is siding with the office against one of the boys, even if he's leaving, Does that mean there's heat on Sean as best you can recall, or did he have enough heat but for other reasons?
You know, the thing about it is, Sean didn't have that much heat back then. He had heat with Brett. They didn't like each other. And that was a personal thing. They're both fighting for the same spot. They both had a personality conflict. There was a style conflict a little bit with their wrestling. You know, they had a lot of conflicts going on right there. They both wanted the same spot was the main issue, I believe. And then there was a little bit of a personality issue that went along with that. It's understandable. It's high octane egos. You don't get to that spot unless you have that. And so that was mainly the problem that you had was Sean and Brett and some of the other Canadians, you know, Davey Boy and some others that, you know, kind of had a residual effect, you know, because they were really good friends with Brett. And you may have had the other side as well. I don't know, you know, with the Click. I don't know. I didn't see how it manifested itself that much. There wasn't heat on Sean. Sean was, God almighty, he was a terrific, I say terrific performer. He's people say he's the greatest in-ring performer of all time, and I'm not going to argue that at all. He was so freaking good. Were there some issues outside the ring? Yeah, there were issues with all of us. We were all a bunch of young guys that were completely untethered to the norm, and we were freaking out of control. And it manifests itself in different ways with everybody. And so there wasn't heat on Sean, and there wasn't heat on Sean for the screw job either. You know, most of us thought that, you know, justifiable or not, that was Vince's title, and we did not want to lose to WCW. And we agreed with the fact that if Brett went down to WCW with the title, it would significantly hurt us. And that means it hurts our living. That means it hurts where we live. That means it hurts how we pay our bills. It might drive us out of business completely. We don't know. Losing Brett was a big deal. Losing Brett with that title was an even bigger deal. So I think a lot of the boys thought, right or wrong, you had to figure out a way for Brett not to leave with that title. Now, I will say this. Brett said later that he would not leave with that title. Brett was a man of his word. If Brett said he wouldn't do it, Brett would not do it. I 100% believe that. Brett is a complete man of integrity. He's a man of his word. Eric Bischoff, though, on the other hand, would have used it if he could have. Eric didn't give his word. Eric was in a battle with Vince, and he's not what Eric would have done was completely different. I 100% believe that Brett would have done it. And by the way, if you want to look at a close parallel, I don't remember the date. I think it was 53. The screw job between Don Eagle and Gorgeous George. Gorgeous George reaction after the quick count from the referee was almost identical to Shawn Michaels. And I've talked to so many guys, Steve Johnson and some others who researched this really well. They believe that George was in on it, even though he didn't really care. It was a thing to get Don Eagle. It was about the Dumont Network in Chicago, and a lot of things went into it. But the reaction from George was almost identical to Shawn. It's just really interesting to see the dynamic of two different screw jobs, whatever it is, 40 years apart, and see the reaction of both two great performers, and it was almost identical.
Gorgeous George and Chief Don Eagle wrestled on May 26, 1950. And I know you and Mr. Briscoe broke that down on Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw back in January of 2022. So if you want to learn more about wrestling's first screw job, Gorgeous George and Don Eagle, I highly
not
recommend
first, but one of the first. Wayne, there were several in the teens and 20s, including Wayne Munn and Stanislaus Bisco is probably the most famous, but not the first, but one of the first biggest for sure.
So listen, there's lots of rumor and innuendo and lots of, respectfully spin. I just want to make sure you know, because I don't know that you would have ever been interested enough to look at this, but technically the story that Brett was, or that Vince was pitching to the boys the day after the Montreal Screwjob of he could have shown up on Nitro tonight. That's not technically true. He was still under contract for another month. And in fact, because he had just gotten in trouble for this with Medusa, Eric Bischoff was kind of adamant, don't bring that belt. We don't want the belt. I don't care about the belt. I think he's gotten his hand slapped about that, but we did have somebody last week based on our conversation, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, who suggested, hey, what if Brett would have shown up with the Winged Eagle and he had an unlabeled, so no logos on it, because I think a lot of fans were under the impression that the WWF owned that title, and that particular one they did, but they did not own the design. Reggie Parks was making that belt for fans. He just couldn't put the WWF logo on it because that's WWE's IP, but he could certainly make that design. And if Bret just showed up on WCW TV with an unlabeled winged eagle, man, you could have had one incredible storyline, but it didn't happen. And all these years later, we're still talking about the Montreal Screwjob. Let's talk about who the real winners and losers are.
Hey,
here.
before you go on, Vince would have done that, by the way. I mean, Vince did the same thing with Flair and the big
91. Yes,
that's right. Vince did the exact same thing. So how do you think Vince knew that what Eric would have done? Because Vince would have done it too. Now, I 100% believe Bret. Bret said he wouldn't do it. Bret is a man of his word. Bret's a man of integrity. Bret would not have done it. But Bischoff didn't give his word, just like Vince didn't give his word to Ted Turner. I wouldn't have blamed Eric for doing it. And I think Eric, I don't see how he wouldn't have. I understand he got some trouble with Medusa and that stuff, but man, that's too big of a freaking carrot dangling right in front of somebody to turn down. Maybe he would have done it, but maybe he's in more legal trouble or more legal issues than one I fault. But that's certainly tempting.
Hey, let me ask you, have you heard Kevin Nash's take on this? He has maintained for years that in his opinion, the Montreal Screwjob was a work. Now, I know you've said you never believed it was, it wasn't, the whole story.
And by the way, no one at the time thought it was a work. That came out later, that people started, putting two and two together, but they've done that with the moon landing and all kinds of stuff since. So it's not unusual for conspiracies to come out later, but nobody at the time thought it was a work, to my knowledge.
The idea that, when you take a look at who benefited from the screw job, it's Bret got one of the richest contracts in wrestling history. Vince McMahon creates the Mr. McMahon character and establishes a feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin that really turns the Monday Night Wars around. It feels like everybody wins. I mean, Rick Rude managed to finesse a guaranteed money contract off of a nightly deal. So a lot of winners going around. Was there a loser? Did anyone come out worse for wear on the other side of the screw job?
Bret, but not because of the screw job. Certainly, he got whatever $3 million a year or whatever it was he got. He got a fortune to go down there, and deserved it.
How's that worse then? If he got a raise, how's that worse?
Because he got injured. The only reason because he got down there and got injured, and never got used after that. If he could have got injured certainly up in WWE. Things happen in the ring when you're in a physical sport, but not because of the screw job. I don't see anybody that came out of that thing worse except for WCW.
Yeah, it's interesting to take a look.
And the reason I say WCW, not because of Bret, they got a great star, but we got out of that. We got Mr. McMahon. That turned the whole tide. That everything changed after that because we got Mr. McMahon, and we had a perfect nemesis for Stone Cold. We had arguably the greatest, one of the greatest heels of all time, and Vince McMahon got created because of that. And one of the reasons that I don't believe it's work at all. I've talked with Jerry Briscoe about it so many times about what he did. Now that this sort of stuff, Bruce had talked Vince into being the character. Vince wasn't sure about that. If it had been a work, that just rolled right into it. Anyway, I don't believe it was, but WCW ended up being the loser because when they got Bret got hurt. And then WWE got Mr. McMahon out of it, and that's what turned the whole tide was Mr. McMahon versus Stone Cold.
And you hit on something interesting there. I want to drill down on. I mean, because listen, there's no other way to say this. Would you trade a healthy, capable Bret Hart in 1997 for we'll call it January of '98 for the Mr. McMahon character? With the benefit of hindsight, it feels like the Mr. McMahon character became much more valuable to WWE than even a healthy Bret Hart could have been.
100%. Yeah, because it could be the greatest heel of all time. And heels draw money. You got this incredible baby face with Stone Cold, who one of the greatest baby faces of all time. And you got the perfect heel. I mean, the perfect heel in Vince McMahon. I don't know how you could have a better heel. I mean, I don't know how, he's on, good Lord, man. He's in Gorgeous George level. There's not a heel that you could say is better than Vince McMahon. And that's what we got out of the Montreal Screwjob. Now, is that a trade-off for one of the other greatest of all time in Bret Hart? Yeah, but do I take Mr. McMahon because of what he can do with Steve and what he did going forward? I think anybody would. I don't care who. You take Mr. McMahon or Hogan. I mean, that guy, people were able to draw money because of Vince, and he made a ton of stars other than Stone Cold. And he didn't make Steve. Brett helped make Steve, but he helped put Steve into a stratosphere. And he made so many guys that, I would trade anybody for Mr. McMahon.
So it's interesting having this discussion because, in a weird way, I don't know that we would have ever gotten the Mr. McMahon character without the screw job. It felt like a necessary evil. It had to happen this way, right?
That's right. We wouldn't have got Mr. McMahon. We wouldn't have got the evil McMahon, Brett spitting on Vince and all that stuff. So I can see where Kevin's talking about this was a work, but in my opinion, it certainly wasn't. It was just, we got something out of it that I don't think anybody expected. And that was the evil Mr. McMahon. I think when he came out at first, he was trying to be a baby face, and it didn't work. And all of a sudden now we got this great heel character. And look, this was just a byproduct of this was just pure luck. It was bad luck for WCW, great luck for us.
Let's talk a little bit about, the screw job and really the Mr. McMahon character and how necessary it was, because I think some fans kind of forget this, but a few years prior to this, Vince kind of tried the evil Mr. McMahon character down in Memphis. Now, maybe not everybody has seen those tapes, but I thought it was a fun little social experiment, if nothing else. But do you think that without the screw job, he would have been talked into that? Or if it was going to happen by that point, it would have already happened? Because, a lot of time had passed between then and now.
Yeah, Vince was throwing everything at the wall. I mean, we were throwing everything at the wall. That's why they're sending, right after the screw job, they're sending me and Wyndham to Japan just to try to get a deal, as an olive branch to get a deal with somebody else, because we're getting our ass kicked and we're not sure what to do. Steve has not completely taken off at this point. And so, the business is not where it's going to be. A lot of it got there because of Mr. McMahon, but, most of it was resting on Stone Cold's shoulders. But no, I think if Mr. McMahon had thought about this before, he would have done it. I think when he did that interview, when he said Brett screwed Brett, I think Vince thought he'd come across as a babyface. He came across as this massive heel, and said all of a sudden now you've got this character that's just thrown in your lap and completely thrown again, and you got to do something with it. And so, no, I don't think he would have had this if not for the screw job. The screw job changed everything. It was the best thing ever happened to WWE and the worst thing that happened to WCW.
Man, what a line. I do want to ask you, you always talk so fondly about Japan. As a reminder, you worked that handicap bunkhouse match in Ottawa on Monday Night Raw on November 10th. 4 days later, because I guess technically they're ahead of time, maybe it's 5 days, depending on who's counting, you find yourself in the New Japan or the All Japan World Tag League tournament, and you're going to be wrestling with Barry Windham, as you mentioned. But do you remember who your opponents were that night? Your first match in Japan that night?
Laurinaitis, I think.
Yeah, Johnny Ace and Kenta Kobashi.
Kobashi, that's right. Yeah.
Kenta Kobashi, if you're not familiar with Japanese wrestling, is often regarded as being one of the all-time greats. I mean, one of the absolute best in-ring performers in the history of professional wrestling. Other people talk about Misawa that way. You got to share the ring with Kobashi. How did he compare? Did he meet your expectations? Did he exceed your expectations? What did you think of Kenta in the ring?
Kobashi was freaking awesome. He was such a good worker. He's the one getting the concussion, by the way. Just a mistake. I got a terrible, worst concussion I ever got was in Japan. And he just caught me with a clothesline in the side of the neck. And just for whatever reason, it wasn't even that hard. For a reason, it was a horrible concussion later in the tour. But Kobashi was awesome. Misawa was good too. Misawa was, was not going to be really snug, but he didn't mind it the same way. And neither did Kobashi. But Kobashi was, man, he could work. And I don't mean like work light. He could work a match. Kobashi was a lot more just the kicks and a good worker. But I think I preferred Kobashi. They're both excellent, by the way. But I think I preferred Kobashi. Really good worker and seemed like just a really nice man. I don't remember him speaking a ton of English. I don't remember. I don't think Misawa did. I don't remember that. They're both great to work with, but you could tell just a super nice person.
Talk to me a little bit about Johnny Laurinaitis. He was wrestling as Johnny Ace in All Japan at the time. Most of our listeners are familiar with him through his People Power character on screen with WWE. You actually got to wrestle in the ring with Johnny Ace, one of the boys, before he was Office. What was your experience like with him?
Yeah, John was a good worker. A lot of guys, that don't like him, and he's a very polarizing figure. Want to say he wasn't a good worker. He was a good worker. John was fine in the ring. He was good. He was like his brother. He was tough. Johnny didn't bitch. He worked over there in Japan, so you don't work there in Japan that much and bitch about getting hit. And Johnny certainly never bitched about it. And John was also very giving in the ring. He was very generous in the ring. He obviously was going to get himself over, but he was really giving and getting the match over. I always say it's where your ego lies. Does your ego lie in yourself, or does your ego lie in the match? If it lies in the match, then that's a fun person to work with. You're going to have probably a really good time out there with him. And John's ego always lied in the match.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had a lot of fun talking about the Montreal Screwjob. It lives in infamy. Nobody will ever forget that date, November 9th, 1997. Maybe you're looking to have a little screw job in your hometown. Well, Blue Chew can help. Guys, it's time to enter the room. Dig first. Blue Chew is not just a tablet. It's a cheat code for your crotch. Stronger, harder, longer lasting. Like somebody gave your downstairs a pep talk and a gym membership, Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. And thankfully with this screw job, we don't need Mr. Briscoe's help. He doesn't even need to know all the details. I will tell you this, I tried Blue Chew and now my hog has a zip code and voting rights. Guys, we're not just talking about your performance. We're talking about your legacy or your third legacy. Give her a group chat something to talk about. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Go discover your options right now at bluechew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code WRESTLE at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over to bluechew.com for details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Hey, so John, let's talk a little bit about Rebellion 2001.
Hey, Conrad, if I could say just one more thing, please. I want to emphasize how this was not a big deal to the boys. I mean, when we got to Japan, we were there during the screw job. When we got to Japan, the boys were like, "Hey, tell us what happened. Tell us what happened." It wasn't that big a deal. It really wasn't. People nowadays making this big deal about there was this polarizing thing, but the boys were upset. That's not true. We got over there and some guys may have said what happened, but it wasn't like, "Hey, tell us what happened. Did this really happen? Did this happen?" And then they take sides as to who was right and who was wrong. People didn't care. It just wasn't their business. And it was just business the way that most of the boys looked at it. Now, if you were Brett or Sean, absolutely, 100%. You're involved in it. But those of us that weren't involved in it, this was not that big a deal to guys back then. I've seen so many reports about how guys were so upset about it. Conrad, that just wasn't true. There were a few guys that were, yes. But for the most part, it just wasn't that big a deal. It was just business as usual.
Well, it was business as usual. 24 years ago this week, you had one of those UK only WWF pay-per-views. I'm talking about Rebellion 2001 in Manchester. For your part, you're in an APA versus Hardys versus Dudleys triple threat match for the WCW tag team titles. The Dudleys are going to win to retain the straps. On top, it's Austin beating The Rock to retain the world title. And Chris Jericho retained his championship, the WCW title, that is, over Kurt Angle. We haven't spent any time talking about this, John, but what was it like to work one of these UK only pay-per-views? Did it feel like an American pay-per-view? Did it feel like a UK tour or something totally different? Like, this is something that we in America, we wouldn't get to see unless we saw it on a VHS home release later. Did it still feel like an American pay-per-view or just business as usual for any European tour?
Not business as usual, I don't think. I think it definitely felt special. UK fans are awesome. I mean, I love being a heel over there, and I love, being able to go over there and cut heel promos on them. They are awesome. They're great wrestling fans, and they are so fun. They are so appreciative of wrestling. I think this may have been the tour where William Regal set me up with the backstage tour of Buckingham Palace, where I actually went down and served drinks in the Queen of England's bar in Buckingham Palace. I believe it was on this tour. But The UK fans are just great fans to be in front of. They love wrestling. They're just great sports fans. Look at how they watch their soccer games. Look at them how they watch anything over there. They're fun people to be in front of. So no, it wasn't business as usual. It was great, and it was also great to have a pay-per-view over there in front of them. They're so appreciative, and it's so fun to work in front of them.
Hey, I do want to ask, and I want to ask for a specific dollar figure, but when it comes to payoffs, how would you get paid on this relative to a regular worldwide pay-per-view? Like, is it more than a regular TV show, more than a house show? Like, did it feel like a pay-per-view payoff, or was it always just sort of random anyway? Just tell me how the pay scale worked for a UK only pay-per-view.
Pay-per-views were always better, and there was some rhyme or reason to it. I mean, most of it was in Vince's head, you know, and he had a certain percentage that you paid to the boys. That part, I'm sure, was just set. But as far as what you got paid, it was all in Vince's head. Vince was, by the way, the best pay guy in the world that I ever worked for. Nobody that I knew of bitched about Vince as a payoff guy. And I know some guys bitched about specific payoffs, but not Vince as a payoff guy. But yes, we got paid more. You know, the problem back then was you couldn't run pay-per-views really outside the country because of the time change. You were reliant so much on the North American market to run at a certain time frame and get the North American money. Now with streaming, it doesn't matter, which is wonderful. That's why you can run all these shows all over the world because streaming, it's changed the dynamics of how you make money. But yeah, we got paid more. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was always a really good check. Any type of pay-per-view, and those over there in the UK were the same. I say those. I remember that may be the only one. I don't know. I remember getting more money for it.
Hey, I do want to ask you, you know, you're challenging for the WCW tag team titles, and we know you never technically wrestled in WCW. Is that a cool novelty, or did it just feel like, man, we got too many belts here? This is getting a little silly.
No, I would have loved to have had them. Just to kind of, tick a box. I've always wanted the NWA title too. You know, to this day, I'd come out of retirement for that freaking NWA title. To this day, I would, because that's something so cool. WCW titles were the same. You know, it's pretty cool. Me and Ron, I think, both of us. I don't know. I never talked to Ron about it. I think both of us kind of thought it'd be cool if we get the WCW titles. We'd held the WWE titles. I think we had at that time. We held them like 3 different times, but I don't remember what number we were on WWE titles. But yeah, it's always cool to hold a different title. We're getting the European title. It's cool to have that. It was just, it's cool to get any type of title, but especially because we had never worked in I had never worked in WCW. Ron, obviously, the champion down there, had, held the main title. But it'd be cool to have held it. So yeah, it was cool. And I thought having the title there, at the time we are starting to get too many titles. Now, the chance to hold it before they get rid of it. But, WCW Invasion didn't work. And, that was one of the byproducts that was this title, which didn't hang around that long.
Let's talk about a sad anniversary. Unfortunately, it was 20 years ago this week that Eddie Guerrero had his last match. He faced Mr. Kennedy at a SmackDown taping. And, I guess I wanted to talk to you about that. Is it true that some wrestlers in WWE were initially concerned? Again, there's no factual basis on this, but this has been a rumor amongst internet fans that maybe that chair shot was too much. I mean, that seems silly, and it feels like fans trying to connect the dots, but I know in the wake of someone passing, everyone's sort of looking for answers. Do you remember anybody thinking at the time that, hey, maybe wrestling had something to do with this? And I don't mean like his personal off the field decision making. I just mean like bell to bell stuff that was happening in the ring. Did that ever come up about Eddie?
No.
Yeah.
Never. Not one time. No. And I think I've heard that over the years. I think it kind of sounds familiar, but nobody thought that. Guys have gotten thousands of chair shots over the years, and guys don't die from chair shots. And so I get why the conspiracy gets put together. Hard chair shot, you die, however long later it was. And I get why people could put, 2 and 2 together like that and get that. But nobody at the time thought that. And I certainly don't believe that now.
I want to ask, you obviously have such a close personal relationship with Eddie, and you've said here on the program, so much of your career to him. at least in your opinion, with the benefit of hindsight, did Eddie seem himself in the final days? Or now with the benefit of hindsight, do you realize maybe he was physically struggling? Because as a fan watching at home, it felt like he was performing at such a high level. It feels like it just caught everyone off guard. Is that fair?
His heart, apparently his heart just stopped. I talked to, Chavos told the story about finding him in his bathroom. He got up in the morning, brushed his teeth, and just died. His heart just quit. His life was over. His life ran out. And there was nothing really. Eddie had there wasn't any specific health issues at the time, and there certainly wasn't anything in ring. It was just something that it wasn't like a deteriorating condition. Unfortunately, his heart was just giving out on him, and he didn't know it. And all of a sudden, it just stopped one morning. And there was not something that led up to it that he was tired or he was despondent or anything like that. There was nothing like that. I was around him as much as anybody, and Chavo hadn't mentioned anything about it either. He just got up one morning and unfortunately his heart stopped.
Listen, we've heard from people like Bruce that Eddie had a reputation for being hard on himself, and maybe he didn't see his abilities the way everyone else did. He obviously didn't think he was as good maybe as we did. What do you think of the way he's come to be viewed by the wrestling audience at large in the 20 years since his passing? Because he's gone from, a heck of a hand in WCW, and boy, this guy has a lot of potential. And now I think people look back and they think, man, what could have been? He's one of the best that ever did it, and his career was just cut tragically short. Are you glad that fans seemingly warmed up to the idea of just how awesome Eddie Guerrero was?
Of course I am. Absolutely. I knew how awesome he was then. Being in the ring with him, it was like being in the ring with Shawn. I'd say there's only a couple guys you ever in the ring that are like that. It was Shawn and Kurt Angle. And those guys just had something about them that, my God, man, it was like an ungrounded electric wire that you just walked out and just shocked the freaking arena. Those guys came out of that curtain and they just changed the arena. It was unbelievable. And to be out there with them, I mean, I don't know if any of them could sit there and describe a match in the back. They're all smart guys, but you get them out there and just magic happens. Those guys. And Eddie was like that. Just magic happened. But I watched some of his old matches, like Psychosis and some other guys, some stuff he did, man. My God, I knew he was great. I didn't realize, I don't even know, like when you watch some of that stuff from the 90s when he was wrestling in either Japan or WCW with the Cruiserweights, you look at it and you think, man, this guy there's nobody in the world like this guy. And the fact that, he was taken from us, he could have had another 10 years of being that same guy. And then after that, he was such a great character. He was so great at the drama part of it. He could have been a manager. He could have been anything in the world. He'd still be in the spotlight if he was here today.
Is there a person in wrestling today, whether they're with WWE or they're with AAA or they're somewhere else, they're TNA, hell, they're AEW. Is there a person out there today who you think, man, that guy could have been Eddie's modern day greatest opponent? Like, is there a guy out there that you think, as a fan of Eddie Guerrero, like I know you are, that guy would be a modern day dream match for him?
Yeah, I'd have to think. I think AJ Styles. I'd love to see AJ Styles against Eddie Guerrero. Those matches would just be freaking astronomical. It'd be so good to watch those guys. I'd love to see Randy Orton against him. I think
that. Yeah,
man, could they have some great matches? And I can't think of anyone else. Like I know there's other guys out there. Those are the two that I think of when I think about great workers, because I got to call a lot of their matches, so I'm very familiar with those guys. But man, could those guys have great matches with Eddie?
I know it's not necessarily from a work rate standpoint what fans may be craving, but imagine the story they could tell with him and Dom. Be unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable, right?
Oh my God. When Dom was, what, he's 7 or 8 years old?
Yes, a little kid.
He was a good worker then. I remember watching him and thinking, my God, look at this kid work. Oh my God, what's up with these boys, man? Between Ray and Eddie, it's like, oh my God, there's not a Guerrero and Mysterio that can't work. It's just like unbelievable. But to have Dom now with Eddie, and be Eddie's protege or whatever you want to have the relationship. Oh my God, that is a match made in heaven.
Is it true? I mean, do you remember hearing the rumors once upon a time that perhaps there was going to be a WrestleMania dream match with Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero? Because that would have been one for the ages too, wouldn't it?
Oh my God. To this, I would hate to have to see it because I don't know how anybody in the world could follow it.
Yeah.
You better put it on last, and you better not have another show for another 6 months and make people miss wrestling, because I don't know how anybody could follow a Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero. I mean, Kurt Angle and Eddie. I mean, this is just, talk about a dream come true. And the drama, Kurt was great too. Like I say, those three guys, but have the drama with Shawn. He was so good with Eddie. I'm talking about the lead up to it would just be, brother, I would hate to be on that card. I'd want to be like on the pre-show. I wouldn't even want to be on the card with them. They'd be so good.
If you want to find the one and only that I could find, Randy Orton, Eddie Guerrero singles match. It happened very early in Randy's career. It was October 11th, 2005 on SmackDown from San Antonio. They went 15.5 minutes. It was a DQ finish, but man, a Randy Orton, Eddie Guerrero story, a Seth Rollins, Eddie Guerrero story, Logan Paul. I mean, there's so many great.
Wow, Logan Paul and Eddie Guerrero. Now Seth would be awesome as well. But my God, Logan Paul playing a smart ass character and Eddie being the smart ass baby face against it. My God, man, take my money. Take my money. Listen, I've got this jar right here. This is what I would give to it right here. This is it.
What are we looking at right there?
That's my curse jar.
So whenever you say Bradshaw 316 and what it stands for, you slide some money in there?
Yep, got to put some money in there.
And what are you going to spend it on? Is that for the Mrs. Layfield? She goes and gets some new dresses or something?
She might can hear this, so I don't want to say completely no.
Got it.
But that's for my basement down here. That's for my man cave. I'm gonna add a couple more TVs. I'm gonna build a sports bar down here. I can't build like a casino, but I can build a sports bar down here. Full sports bars where I'm gonna build with probably a pool table and a Pac-Man machine.
I like that you got a plan. You gotta have a plan.
That's right.
Listen, you need a plan too, because life happens fast. 1 minute you're driving home after work, and the next you see those flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart skips, your hands tighten on the wheel, and you start asking yourself, what do I do now? That's when you need someone on your side. And with the Legal Buddy app, you can connect with a local attorney in seconds, not hours, not days, but right when you need the help. Whether it's a DWI, a car accident, a criminal charge, or even just a traffic ticket, the Legal Buddy app puts real legal support right in your pocket. Imagine having an attorney on call, ready to guide you through some of life's most stressful moments. This isn't a call center. It's not a waiting game. It's direct access to a lawyer who understands your situation and your community, and one who can step in right away. Think about it this way. When trouble knocks, do you want to face it alone? Or would you rather have the confidence of knowing a professional is already on your side? That's the peace of mind Legal Buddy gives you. And here's how easy it is. Just download the Legal Buddy app at legalbuddyapp.com. Register today and use the referral code LEGAL for your chance to win a $250 Amazon gift card. Life is unpredictable. Accidents happen, tickets happen, mistakes happen. But when they do, you don't have to go through it alone. The Legal Buddy app, always on your side. Download the app today and enter the referral code LEGAL. Hey, did you know you can own for less than your current rent? We can help at savewithconrad.com. Stop throwing your money away on rent. You don't know any wealthy renters. Start building wealth for your family with my family at savewithconrad.com.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
We are excited about one of the better topics we've had in quite a while. This time it's going to be all fun here on JBL's Top 5. It's JBL's Top 5 legendary drinkers. And we're going to come in right here, coming in hot at number 5, your long time, great, close, personal friend, the one and only Barry Windham. Why is Barry Windham number 5?
People don't realize how cool Barry Windham is as a human being. He is Cool Hand Luke. I say the same thing about Undertaker, and I mean that about Undertaker too. He is just cool. There's everything about Windham is just he's just unbelievable. You know, maybe that Blackjack thought he could leave him with the Briscoe brothers down in Florida and let him break in the business down there. That might be maybe what turned him into this legendary Barry Windham that everybody knows. Barry could drive a car, like Harley. He could drive a car 100 miles an hour everywhere we went. Barry could drink the most insane amount of beer I've ever seen in my life and not go to the bathroom. Barry would sit there and drink 20 beers at a sports bar, and he would not go to the bathroom. Yeah, he may have been pissing in a potted plant in the corner. I don't know, but it was unbelievable. It just like sitting there, Barry, you hadn't gone to the bathroom. I'm good, kid. I'm good, kid. He would just sit there and drink, and he wouldn't get drunk. And so the legendary beer drinkers that I have on here are not drunks. They're guys who could drink legendary amounts of beer and still stay, seemingly able to function in life. Barry was one of those guys. I've never seen anything like it. And I've been, look, I was in pro sports in the late 80s, pro wrestling through all the heydays of the drinking and the drugs and everything. Barry Windham's in a class of his own. All these guys are that are on this list.
Well, let's talk about who else is on the list. Coming in at number 4, you want to talk about a topical name. Maybe it's a name that people wouldn't expect. John Cena is number 4 on your list, John. How does John Cena come in at number 4?
Well, let me tell you how he got started. So we're playing golf, and I don't remember if it was in Colorado. We were playing at Broadmoor one. I don't remember if it was Broadmoor or not. We're playing somewhere. A lot of times when we had Monday off, because we had to split shows. So we'd work, a lot of times Friday, Saturday, Sunday, take Monday off. We didn't always work Monday. I mentioned, earlier that sometimes we ran competition against ourselves. A lot of times we didn't. So we'd have Monday off. Then we had to work Tuesday, which was SmackDown. For the TV trucks, they would work back-to-back days, somewhere in close proximity. Well, we would have Monday off. So we started doing things on Monday. We started going golfing. We went to like laser tags. We started doing all kinds of crazy stuff on Monday, but it always involved booze, because we were young and having fun. And that's, one of the things we like having as a party favor. So we go golfing, and John could hit a ball a mile. He's almost world-class strength, Olympic lifting. I mean, John's a freak athlete, especially in strength. He could hit a golf ball a freaking mile and dead straight. Now he didn't play golf that well because he didn't play that often, but he could hit a golf ball. So we had a long drive contest, and he hit a ball, and it was one of the rare times he didn't crush it. And so he lost. So he had to down a beer. And that was the punishment for not, becoming having the long drive of the thing. So John downs the beer. Another one downs another beer. We bet on putts. We bet on this, down a beer, down beer, down beer. And John looked at me at one point and said something kind of crazy. And I thought, that's kind of strange. And I thought, well, no big deal. I found out later he had never drank before. So I would have never said for John to drink a beer. But he, out of respect, he didn't say no. He did the same thing with Undertaker later with whiskey. Undertaker took him out, wanted to, kind of, break him in the business and talk to him and drink some whiskey. John never drank whiskey before. So go from that to, say, a few years later, John's putting everybody to bed. John one time, this is how cool John is. John told me, he said, hey, man, I just want to say thanks. I got my bus here. I got some great catering for you, some steaks and some moonshine and all kinds of things, which I don't know about. Like, I don't know why a Hollywood star has moonshine. So he takes me on a bus ride between cities, which is really cool. Me, Michael Cole, and Chimmel, which unfortunately Chimmel is still alive, which is a tragedy, but he is. And so Chimmel, we get on the bus and have all this moonshine. Cena, about the end of it, is I don't remember getting off the bus. And that's Cena's like putting me in the hotel and putting me to bed and all this stuff. Cena has one of the highest tolerances. He's like Andre level now. He's the guy who puts people to bed. He's the guy that would stay up and would drink. He doesn't get drunk. He just sits there and drinks. He puts guys to bed. He takes care of everybody. Then he goes to bed. He's the first one up always. And in the morning in the gym training, setting an example. Cena is, I'm telling you, Andre level drinking.
I don't know that I would have expected that, but I'm also shocked at who's number 3 on JBL's list of the top 5 legendary drinkers throughout wrestling history. A name we're familiar with here on this show, Brother Love, Bruce Prichard is number 3. What?
Brother, that guy has more tolerance. You know, he kicked out of a surgery. Because they couldn't figure out how much to put him under. Yeah, his tolerance level is massive for everything, by the way. But for booze, he was down in Texas with Mr. Briscoe. Some local guy challenged him to a beer chugging contest, and some local redneck, Brother Love, drank him under the table. They almost got shot. Bruce can freaking drink. And the best part about it is Bruce is the nicest drunk there ever is. He's a guy who can sit there and drink as much as you want him to drink. He'll be with you all night long, and he's just friendly. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't get in fights. He's just a friendly drunk. He put me to bed one time in St. Louis, and we still don't have any idea how I finally made it to bed because I punched him. But sometimes when you get drunk, you got to punch. There's me, him, and Mr. Briscoe. But what a run that Bruce and Gerald Briscoe had. Let me tell you a quick story. So Scott Armstrong, his first night in the business, first of all, they played a lot of ha-ha with him in the ring. Then Scott tells me his story. Bruce is sitting there on the couch in the lobby of the hotel, and Scott's walking in, and Bruce is sitting there drinking, and he's having fun. You know, and Bruce, you can tell when he's been drinking because he's funny, he's friendly, he's never mean. He's a really, really good drunk, but he can drink a copious amount of booze. So when Gerald Briscoe walks in, Bruce goes and starts making native chants at him. Briscoe checks in, drops his bags. Bruce is sitting on the couch. Jerry Briscoe takes a running start and does a crossbody on him, and Bruce and the couch and everything goes spilling across the lobby. That's how those guys had fun. One morning, like at 2:00 in the morning, I hear them outside my room. I open up the door, and this one I caught them with their amateur headgear on. And I said, "What are y'all doing?" They go, "We're looking for Kurt Angle." I said, "Guys, this is one of the worst ideas you've ever had in your life. I promise you don't want to find him. You do not want to find him. Not in your condition. You don't want to find him." They found him, and it was, I think, a really bad night for them.
Well, I'm interested to see who's above John Cena, Barry Windham, and Bruce Prichard. Coming in at number 2, typical JBL fashion, it's a tie with the Last Call legends, The Undertaker and The Godfather. Are they the salt and pepper of the bar? I mean, this is freaking frack right here, is it not?
Oh my God, is it? You know, people talk all the time about me and Ron drinking. We had a reputation for it, and we did. We deserved that reputation. But when you talk about guys that can drink people under the freaking table and not get drunk, I'm not talking about just fall down drunks here, people that were alcoholics and drunks and all that stuff. We all may be, but all these guys can handle their booze. Godfather and Taker could sit there and they would drink. Now that's the little bottle they have on the plane. They would sit there and drink and gargle Jack Daniel's whiskey, and the whole bottle be gone. Then another bottle be gone. Then another bottle be gone. These guys had a freaking tolerance level that was that of the dinosaurs. It was unbelievable. People talk about the APA. Those guys, that right there is the real APA. Those guys right there, brother. I think me and Ron will cede them the title because those guys both, and they're both just the greatest dudes on the planet. But man, can those guys drink?
Well, listen, I got to be honest. I'm kind of surprised with some of the names on the list so far, but these are not 2 of them. I can't wait to see who's number 1 on JBL's list of the top 5 most legendary drinkers in wrestling. Dick Murdoch.
Oh, buddy, anybody who knew Murdoch would tell you that man drank more beer than any human being alive. Any human being alive. He had some type of deal with Coors Light, and they paid him to drink. They paid him to drink their beer. So we go all over Texas. We were tag teaming. He'd show up at a bar, and he'd just start drinking Coors Light with the locals. But he drank beer all the time. Murdoch would drink beer on the way to the show. Murdoch would drink beer after the show. He would drink beer in the morning. You've never seen a guy drink more beer than Dick Murdoch. I used to have when he would drive, you know, and he would just make me hand him beer, and I finally realized if I wasn't handling the beer with the mouth toward him, he'd throw it out the window. And I talked to somebody else that he had done that to too. Dick was crazy, but he could drink an unbelievable amount and was hilarious. I mean, Dick was hilarious. I don't know if he's ever sober. I don't know if I ever saw him sober. Dick was hilarious sober, or at least less drunk. Dick was hilarious drunk. Dick was a funny guy. But man, I think one of the greatest. Now, I made this list, top 5 beer drinkers of all time, not named Andre, because I think everybody knows Andre holds the top spot. I don't think that's any in doubt. So what I want to do is make a list that top 5 beer drinkers not named Andre. Dick Murdoch is the only guy below Andre, in my opinion, that I've seen.
Well, listen, there's some other honorable mentions you put on the list. Probably no surprise. Stone Cold Steve Austin makes your honorable mention list. I think everyone would agree with that one.
Yep.
Sandman makes the list. I mean, we saw those two.
Yeah.
And then the Crusher. Now, that's a name that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. Why does the Crusher make your honorable mention?
The first guy to drink on TV. You know, the Crusher was just, Minnesota, people up there love to drink. For one, their women are really large, and if you'd have a zero population if you didn't have the guys that drank. So you have to drink. And but it's cold up there, so you got to drink anyway. But Crusher was the first guy to drink on TV. He'd down a beer in the middle. You look at the hockey games up there. Look at when you have Yelich up there that goes to a basketball game or something. First thing they want to do is have him down a beer or something. The guys up north love to drink. And Crusher was a huge baby face up there, and he would drink mid promo. Now, this was 30 years before Stone Cold, 30 years before Magnum, 30 years before any of these guys. Sandman, who would drink on television. Crusher was the first, but he was one of the reasons he was so popular was he was just a fun beer drinking guy.
I'm kind of surprised, if I'm honest with you. Ric Flair doesn't make the list of legendary drinkers.
I wasn't around Rick that much. So Flair was the one who helped facilitate a lot of people drinking, but wasn't around for that much.
All right. Well, he'd be on my top 5 list. We want to know, who do you think would be in your top 5 of legendary drinkers? We've all heard the stories. Besides Andre, what do you think that top 5 could look like? Let us know in the comments below. John, I don't know if you saw, but over the weekend, there was a report from Dave Meltzer that once upon a time, WWE was interested in having him, and then later, even Brian Alvarez work for the company. Have you heard this? Have you seen this report? What do you think of this?
I saw the report, yes. And I think there may be some, I don't know. I'm not going to call Dave a liar on something like this. This could very well be true. I assume it is, if he said it and used Alvarez as a source to back him up. It seems like something that probably happened. Vince tried a million things, and I don't doubt that this might be something that Vince tried. I can't, guarantee it's true, but I'm not going to dispute it and say it's not. But yeah, I think this could very well be true. Vince was willing to try anything. Let me tell you a little bit about Vince. So Vince used to get feedback from, they don't tell how many people that Vince would get, and Vince would read every single word that was written, every word that was written. And he got tons of feedback from all kinds of people who would send him stuff. So he told me one time, he said, man, I got some stuff from Howard Finkel. And he goes, man, some of it's just awful. He said, but he says, you never know where something Howard writes me, it sparks an idea with me and something comes out of it. So that's why Vince would read everything that there was. And so Vince was always willing to try stuff. So if Vince thought that maybe Meltzer had a handle on, what the mainstream people wanted, I think that this is something that Vince certainly would have tried. I don't know the time frame, and I never heard this before, but it sounds logical to me.
Well, I had a lot of fun breaking down some of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the anniversaries of professional wrestling this week. But I think the big news that we want to talk about right now is there's rumor and innuendo out there, John, that maybe perhaps a member of a very famous wrestling family has been giving you some pointers and some tips on getting into better shape. Can you catch me up on this?
I certainly can. Mr. Briscoe has kind of acquired, not 100% for sure yet, Jody Malenko. Jody Malenko was Carl Gottsch's best student. Everybody says that. Malenko was, brother, he was a killer. That guy should have been in MMA. He would have done very, very well. A lot of people are very leery of Jody Malenko. He is a freaking legend. There's a great Boss Rutan clip out there. I don't know if it's been made public yet about Jody going in the MMA Hall of Fame in Florida. And it's just fantastic. I mean, guys who talk about Jody talk about him in reverential terms. And Jody has agreed to train me. You know, I had a deal set up, I've talked about before with TNA, where I was going to do something, and then creative changed, and it didn't make any sense. And I walked on it because I'm not going to do something that's bad for the business and bad for me both. And it was a terrible idea. It was not Tommy. Tommy Dreamer had come up with a really good idea. He got overruled, and Tommy didn't agree with it. The guy that overruled him got fired, but the deal never came back on the table. So it never worked out. But so I started thinking, I still, want to have the ability to do something. And so I was talking to Gerald Briscoe about it. And I said, "You think Jody would help you train me?" And he said, "Jody can train you." So I've got all kinds of training equipment, from Persian clubs to a suplex dummy I call Bruce, and wrestling mats. And I've got all kinds of things set up of different places I'm going to visit and train with. But the main thing is Jody has agreed to train me, and the guy in the mode of Carl Gotch coming down. So I've got, possibly the best trainer in the world, and we'll see what happens.
I can't wait to see what's next. As a reminder, you may be asking yourself, Jody Malenko. Now, listen, if you grew up a WCW fan, you know his brother, Dean Malenko. If you're a longtime fan, you know their father, Boris Malenko. And when you really think about Boris Malenko and that training pedigree, that no doubt has been passed down to Jody. And here's a little fun fact. I think I have this right. Is it true that Jody Malenko once wrestled as Carl Gotch Jr.?
Yes, they did in Mexico, I believe.
I mean, think about that. When you're given a handle like that speaks to the level of your technical prowess. But Boris Malenko not only trained his sons, Dean and Joe, but Kane, Bart Gunn, Tugboat, Al Perez, Norman Smiley, Barry Horowitz, Gangrel, X-Pac, Bob Orton Jr., Buddy Landell, Horace Hogan, Mark Mero, Perry Saturn. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And now you may be the next protege in the Malenko training regime. This is kind of fun.
This is kind of fun. I'm really excited about it. Jody's got a terrific sense of humor. I mean, he's almost, he and Dean both are really, really funny guys. I enjoy texting with him. And he and Mr. Briscoe are the two most smart-ass coaches in the world. I send them a video, and all they do is tell me how bad it is. But I think somewhere in there, there's some kernels of truth that might help me. I'm not sure. They are having a lot of fun at my expense right now, but I'm really excited about it. Jody is the guy, but he gets brought over to Japan. He is so revered over there. He gets brought over to Japan because of his association with Gotch. He's Gotch's best student. I mean, this guy has an unbelievable resume. And, Jody just had the ability to make a lot of money. That's what he's done in his life. And he's a really smart guy. And he agreed to train me, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, we're excited too. I'm sure he's being very, very supportive, and I hope to get some updates in the coming weeks.
We're going to have tons of stuff, Connor. I want to have tons of stuff. We're actually hopefully have a video stuff we're going to start doing and do some stuff and show kind of what he's doing with me and some of his coaching smartassness between him and Briscoe. Briscoe is kind of like what was Apollo, the guy Paulie's name? Like Paulie, sitting there drinking a beer, making fun of Rocky. I think that's kind of what Mr. Briscoe is doing with me. But anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun, I believe.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun with you next week here on the program. I hope you'll hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. The rumor and innuendo is there's going to be big news in the WWE landscape over the next week. We're going to break it down, and we want to hear from you. Drop us a comment, throw us that thumbs up. Hell, throw us a thumbs down if you want. It all helps the algorithm. We greatly appreciate you guys hitting the subscribe button and spending some time with us. Tell your friends about your favorite podcast. That's Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. Notice no question mark at the end. And sooner rather than later, John, what's that new t-shirt going to say?
Bradshaw's 316 says, "I stole your fucking podcast."
And we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.
On that podcast, Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. Hey, just in time for the holidays, what if you didn't have to worry about any of that credit card debt? If you're feeling stuck making the minimum payments and you don't want to have to put Christmas on a credit card, we can help at SaveWithConrad.com. We routinely help our listeners save hundreds of dollars a month Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com.